yeah, hi to everyone. Thanks for attending today. Yeah, so just to, so we'll be focusing on seamless purchasing workflow, but just a little bit of background about our company. So we've been working with Sage 300 for over 20 years. And so we've got over 3,000 customers around the world that use our solutions with Sage 300. And really what we focus on is workflow and procure to pay solutions. And so for a lot of Sage 300 customers, it's a very important business process. We work just purely with Sage, so that's the only ERP that we work with is those from Sage. And down the bottom there, we've got some of the awards that we've won over the years, and so very proud to be the recipients of those awards. Okay, so we've got a few PowerPoint slides just to sort of illustrate how our solutions work, because we think that's important to cover that off, and then we'll have a quick look at a bit of a demo of the software after that. So this diagram here is showing the different workflow solutions that we've got. So we've got over here is purchasing workflow. So this is what we'll be focusing on today. So the procurement side of it. So we've got purchasing workflow. That's where you can set up the workflow to go through multiple approval steps and have all your delegated authorities for how much people can approve. And then we've also got the funds availability module. So that's the GL budget checking. It also does project and job costing budget checking as well. So for some businesses, that's very important, that whole budget checking. And then down below there is workflow documents. So this module lets you attach your supporting documents to your transaction. So you can attach your quotes from your suppliers. And so those can be either in PDF format or Word or Excel or bitmap. So multiple formats can be supported. Okay, so that's the purchasing side of things, and you can use all this within Sage 300, but we've also got a web interface, and we've had this for many years, and because with purchasing it involves normally a lot of the users within the company need to use the purchasing function, so they want to use a browser rather than logging into Sage 300. So that's an option that's available as well. So we've got two other workflow modules that we won't cover today, but to just mention them just so that you're aware of them. So this one here is payables workflow. So this is the workflow on supplier invoices. So when an invoice comes in, that can go through an approval process as well. And on the right-hand side is workflow notifications. And this module provides workflows in 22 different parts of Sage 300. And some examples are vendor master files, customer master files, general ledger account codes, IC items. So all of those master files, you can have an approval process on them. And also some of your key transactions, so AP payments, GL journal entries, AR credit notes, and IC adjustments are some of the key ones. So those are sort of the transactions where users can sort of perpetrate a fraud within an ERP system. So those are the ones that we have workflows on those. And so just one that we think is really important for a lot of Sage 300 customers is the vendor master files, because we hear of some cases with different ERPs where staff change the bank account number to their own bank account number on the vendor master file and then make a payment. So that's why that's probably the most common area where workflow notifications is used to have an approval process on vendor bank account numbers. All right, so that's just covering off the overview there. This next slide is showing us the P2P, so the whole procure to pay, the end-to-end business process. So I won't spend much time on this, but just really pointing out that we've got these 6 sort of main areas. within any P2P system within an ERP. And you can see along here, the second row, we've got controls across all of these steps. So with our 3 modules, you can have really good controls across the whole procure to pay business process. Okay, now this next diagram is looking at purchasing workflow just specifically now, which is what we're focusing on today. So you can see in the green boxes are the Sage 300 modules. So we've got general ledger, accounts payable, purchase orders, inventory control, and project and job costing. So, and then you can see the modules within the purchasing workflow suite are in the blue boxes. So we've got purchasing workflow. That's sort of the core module. So that's where I've touched on it already, but that's where you set up your workflows. So you can have multiple workflows. So you might have one for operating expenditure and another workflow for capital expenditure and another workflow for repairs and maintenance, that sort of thing. And each workflow can have many steps, and it can automatically go up through the delegated authorities to make sure it meets all the approvals. And then once a requisition is fully approved, then it creates the purchase order within Sage 300. And so this is really a key benefit of our system. And this is, you know, we do a lot of work with Microchannel and with Microchannel's customers. And one of the main benefits that we keep hearing is just how our solution is so seamless. So it's sort of developed inside the Sage environment. And so that just makes it really easy for you as customers to learn it, and also then for maintaining it. You can do a lot of the maintenance yourselves, so it sort of makes it a very cost-effective solution. Yeah, so anyway, so yeah, once a requisition's fully created, fully approved, then it creates a purchase order within Sage. So it's like a front end to the Sage PO module. Right, so that's purchasing workflow. Then we've got workflow documents. I've already talked about that. That's where you can attach your supporting documents. Then we've got on the left-hand side, funds availability for the real-time budget checking. So it checks GL budgets, and if you've got project and job costing, can also check PJC budgets or estimates. So that's only really, we find that applies to certain types of organisations like government departments and not-for-profits sort of ones, and also mining, I think, was another industry where funds availability is very important. Then over on the right here, we've got a couple of other modules that are, again, for some businesses, well, you know, for some businesses they're not applicable, so they don't need to buy them, but for other businesses they're really important. Internal issues is quite a good one. That's used a lot by mining companies. We've got quite a good number of mining companies around the world that use this whole suite. And so internal issues, that's where you're consuming the inventory. So you've got inventory, and instead of selling that inventory, you're consuming it as part of the operation. So mining companies, you know, they're big storerooms, and the people do a requisition to get something out of the store. So that requisition goes through an approval process, but instead of creating a purchase order, it creates an internal issue order. So yeah, so that's for mining companies. Also, I think hotels use internal issues quite a lot as well. Vendor catalog, I won't go into that too much, but that's really just if you have contracted prices with your vendors, you can put them in the catalog. What the system can actually do, it can force the users to buy certain items from the approved vendors. So this is something we find quite a lot more in Asia and Africa. This, you know, this approved vendors is quite a key requirement. So yeah, so that's that side of it. And then PW Web, again, the browser interface. So people can do requisitions through the web, and they can also do their approvals through their web. Okay, and so this infographic is now looking at the AP automation side of it. So that's not really what we're focusing on today. So I won't go through this. It probably takes about 5 minutes to go through all of this. But you can just, I suppose, a few key things. Again, you set up your workflow for your approval steps. You can do your approvals through the web or through a smartphone app. But we've also got automated data capture of supplier invoices. So, and it can also support credit cards. So if those areas are of interest, then please contact your microchannel person in regards to them. All right, now I've touched on PW Web a couple of times, and so there's a couple of really important points about PW Web. So here, this is showing over here on the right-hand side. This is your Sage 300 system, wherever it's set up currently, within your own server room or within a data center. So with PW Web, we've got software that's running on our servers that are in a data center in Melbourne. And so what our software does, it connects to the Sage 300 system using web services. So if someone does a requisition in the web, that'll talk to our software, which talks to Sage 300, and then the requisition will be created. But all the heavy lifting is done within Sage 300, and we don't store any transactional data out on our system. Excuse me. So this is really, it's just like a web portal, just to make it easier for users to do requisitions and also to do approvals. So a few key points. So we're not storing any transactional data on our system. That's only in Sage 300. So it's really, good from that point of view. You don't need to be worried about your data being held by us or by an outside party. But the other real benefit is the LAN pack. So with our system, you can have one Sage LAN pack, and that can let 50 different requisitioners and approvers share that one LAN pack, because it's just talking very short bursts. So again, it just makes the whole system much more cost effective if you're rolling it out to sort of 100 users or 200 or 300 users. So, yeah. All right, so that's really the key points we're wanting to show there. So now we'll just show you how this module looks within the desktop. So here you can see the Sage desktop, and so these are all the Sage modules that you'll be familiar with, some of those or most of those. So here's Purchasing Workflow. So you can see it just sits within the Sage environment, just like a Sage module. So the tools that our developers use is called the Sage 300 Software Development Kit. And so what our developers use is exactly the same as what the Sage 300 developers use. And so we, follow the Sage. We try and make our modules look exactly like a Sage module. And we have a lot of communication with the Sage developers. We just had a call this morning with the senior Sage architect over in the US. So, we sort of really follow in their guidelines very closely. So you can see all the folders here. I won't go through them now because we don't really have the time in this session. But if we come to the setup folder, so you can see these are just some of the key parts of the setup. So I'll just talk about them. Although the authority levels is a pretty important one, this is where the delegated authorities are set up. So I'll just open this up quickly. So you can see over on the left here, we've got our different delegated authorities. So 10 is the board of directors, 20 is the CEO, 30 is the CEO and CFO, and it goes along like that. And here we've got what we call authority level values. So this is the delegated authorities. So what we're saying, if for the CFO, that person, for the CFO, for this workflow can approve up to $2,000, but for this other workflow they can approve only $1,000. So this is where you can set up different approval limits for the different workflows. And so over here, if we look up a user, you can see this user here is called control, and so they've got authority level of 30. So this is how we say for each user what their authority level is, and that controls how much they can approve a requisition for. Right, then there's some other setup screens. We don't really have time to look at those, but the workflows one is quite important, just to give you a good understanding of how the system works. So here, this is one we call a typical real world workflow. So you can see we've got these steps here, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50. And so you just number the steps however you want to. We always recommend going in steps of 10, so you can come and add in steps later on if you need to add in some more. And so what this is saying here, it's going first of all to the purchasing manager. Then if that person approves it, it goes to step 20, which is the cost center manager. We could have it checking the budget as well if we wanted to. And so this is where the system actually checks the GL budget automatically. And then it can go to the cost center manager, then it can go to the controller, and then it can check a dollar value. And if it's over $5,000, it goes to the general manager. So yeah, so this just gives you a bit of an idea of the multiple steps that you can set up, but also, you know, it's just very easy to see what it's doing once it's set up. We always recommend that, you know, the microchannel consultants are involved when you first set it up, because I've got, you know, a lot of experience with our modules and, you know, what works best and all that sort of stuff. But once it's up and running, then it's you know, it's really, you guys as customers can maintain it yourselves. Then we've got a flow chart as well, so you can it shows you there how the workflow is, and you can just hover over the steps and it explains what each step's doing. So that's really good when you're first setting up the workflow to make sure it's working fine. All right, so that's the configuration side of things, and then on the transaction, so you can see here, if we come to transactions, you can got requisition entry, you can do purchase orders as well. Then we've got the approval console. So for people that are within Sage, they can do their approvals within Sage 300. Then we've got PO change order. We've got receiving, so we've added more functionality to the receiving over and above what the Sage receiving screen does. All right, so you can do your transactions through the desktop, but what we find most of our clients prefer using the web interface. So I'll show you how that works now. So you can see here we've got this is a URL. It's got our banner at the top. So what you can do is put in your own banner there, so with your own, you know, logo and that sort of thing. And then we choose which company. So if you've got multiple companies in Sage 300, they're presented there. And then we log in. And so what it's doing at this point is saying, for that user, is that password correct within Sage? And then if it is correct, then it's reading their security resources that user has from Sage. And so what we're, again, just trying to emphasize here or communicate to you is just the seamlessness of our solution. So, you know, again, we're just using all the security from Sage 300. We're not reinventing that ourselves. So you can see these different menus. So here are our approval consoles. So you can approve your requisitions and you can approve supplier invoices. Then under transactions, these are all the transactions you can do through the web. So you can do a requisition, you can do stock transfers, transit transfers. You can do receiving. So that's used very, very commonly. Then we can do punch out requisitions. That's where the system will take you over to your supplier's website and you can shop on their shopping cart, and then it brings that transaction back into the system. And then we've got PO change orders and then invoice entry. So there's quite a number of transactions that can be done through PW Web. And then we've got our inquiries. So we can look up requisitions for our cost centers. We can look up our own requisitions. And then we've got some of these other inquiries as well. Substitutions, this is if someone's going away on leave. if a manager's going away on leave for a week, they would come in and put in a substitution. And what they're saying is, from this, well, I'm going away on leave next week from Monday to Friday. While I'm away, send anything that comes to that person to another user. And so that means the whole purchasing keeps moving along, even if people go on leave. Right, so what we'll do is we'll come and do a requisition. So that was just sort of explaining to you all the breadth of the PW web. So if we come and do a requisition, so we need to choose a workflow. So we'll just choose one called simple. So that just has one approval step, or maybe one or two. And then we need to choose our cost center. So these are two mandatory fields, the workflow and the cost center. And both of them you can limit what users have access to. So that's a very important or powerful part of our system. Just, you can really control what users can access, so that you can't just access all the cost centers. You can just limit them down to the cost centers that you want them to be restricted to. Well, you can see here job related, so all of our modules are all tightly integrated with Sage project and job costing. And then, so if we look at our templates, we'll do a conference template. So that's where let's say we're going to a conference in Adelaide. And so a template's brought these lines onto the screen for us. So, get another part of the purchasing system, you want the users, for it to be easy for the users to use. So if your people in your company buy certain things together, then you can set up a template. And so here you can see airfares, accommodation, incidentals, and each line is a different vendor as well. So we've brought on a default vendor there. And you can see it's also built the GL codes for us. So this is another whole area of the purchasing workflow, is the building of the GL codes for the users. Right, so if we put on our airfares, so let's say we'll do 2 airfares at $400 each, then click update, and then with our accommodation, we'll say 3 nights of accommodation, $200 per night. And I'll delete that line. Just sometimes people wonder if you can delete a line on a template, and you definitely can. Then we'll come and add a new line just to show you what that's like. So we just start typing in some characters, and you can see it just narrows down the list. And that's looking at the description as well as the item code. So it's very easy for operational users to use. We can change the description, and then on our vendors, so we can just, again, start typing some characters in it. And this is just picking up all of the vendors from your accounts payables module. Put in our quantity, and you can see it's built the GL code for us. We can change the GL code if we've been given access. So most of these fields you can control whether the users can access them, or whether they're read-only, or whether they're hidden. All right, so that's our taxis, $100. And now let's look at our workflow documents. So this is where we can attach some supporting documents. So let's just go to purchasing workflow. So supplier quote, so here's the first quote. And then we can come and attach a second quote. So you can attach numerous files. Right, so now we're happy with that requisition, so we now click submit. And so this is now, what it's doing is putting this requisition into the Sage database and putting it into the workflow. So like I've sort of said a few times, the data's just within Sage. So you can see requisition number 930. So let's go and look at our Sage system. If I come into our management inquiry, and I'll look at in process. So there you can see number 930. So it's a real-time integration or real-time communication with Sage 300. So, it's not sitting out on our servers and periodically pushing it into Sage, it's real time. And so you can see it's gone to someone called, this column here, next actioner, this tells us who a requisition's sitting with. So it's gone to the division manager. So that person would have got an email, and with emailing, there's different ways you can have that set up. You can have one email going out for each requisition, or you can have sort of consolidated emails where an email just goes, once in the morning and once in the afternoon, that sort of thing. So now, and that email would have a hyperlink. So I should just go back a step. So that email would have this hyperlink in it. So the user just clicks on that from the email, it takes them to this login page, and it can populate their user ID as well. So then they just need to put in their password. And so now this is a manager doing an approval of a requisition. So if we come into, so what it's bringing up there was the invoices, but we'll just change that to requisition. So here's number 930, at Conference in Adelaide, from this person for this centre, $1,748. So what we can do is we can click on this link here, this hyperlink, to look at the details. So that's showing us airfares, accommodation, taxis, and who the vendors are, and the GL codes, and the dollar values. We can look at the documents, look at the quotes that this person's attached. It's not a very good example, but anyway. And then we can look at other fields here. We can look at the event log. So that actually, I haven't really mentioned this, but there's a really strong audit trail of who does the approvals, or who created the requisition, who did the approvals. So that's all just available within the system, and that's kept as long as you want. So it can be many years. So if your auditors want to look at it, then it's all available. Yeah. Right, and then just quickly, we've got funds availability. So this is the real-time budget checking. So that's that dollar icon on the end. So what the system's now doing is sending a request to the funds availability module within Sage, saying, for the GL accounts on this requisition, how are we looking compared to budget? So you can see here budget, actual, committed, and available. So these are just so your budget's from Sage, then you've got your actuals from Sage GL and AP, and then commitments. These are all your purchase orders that are open purchase orders. And so here it's showing you what your position is, and this is not a great example because this company is blowing their budget quite majorly. But what we've heard, a lot of our clients have said with funds availability, it's really, reduce the amount of blowing budgets quite significantly. All right, so that's that funds availability. So if this person's happy with this, then they would just go and they can change the status. I'll leave that one there as it is, and I'll just go and do another one. So we can just sort of change this to approved, and we can put in a comment as well, so a 60-character comment, and we can approve that one, and then we'll decline this one, and we'll say this isn't necessary or something like that. Right, so we can approve, multiple and decline multiple, and then we hit postmark documents, and that'll then move all of those requisitions along to the next step in the process. Right, now I've left number 930 there because the other thing I was wanting to show you was the smartphone app, which is called Pacifictech Go. And so this really just comes together with PW Web. So from a pricing point of view, you get both of them, and you just, it just doesn't really matter which one your users use. What we tend to find is sort of CFOs really like using the smartphone app, just because it's so easy to use. So now we're logging in with the same credentials again. So now it's showing us here what approvals we've got. We've got 9 requisitions. So we click on this arrow, and that'll now list those requisitions. Here's number 930 at the bottom. Conference in Adelaide, $1,700. We can see it's got 2 attachments. So we now drill into that because we want to look at the details. So we can see the lines there. what each of the lines are. Then we can look at the workflow events. So we can see that it was submitted at this date and this time. And if other people had approved it, we'd see that there as well. And then we've got the workflow documents. So from the phone, we can open up the quotes and look at them as well. Right, and then so if we're happy, or if we're happy with that, we click on the green tick and we say, and now it goes green. So while it's going green, that's just while it's communicating back with Sage 300 to say move that along. And you can see that's now gone from 9 down to 8 because that requisition's been moved along to the next person in the process. Right, so let's come back to our Sage 300 and we'll click refresh on our management inquiry. So this is just showing us ones that are moving, that are in the process. So now you can see this one here has now gone to the controller. So if I just double click on this and I can come to the workflow events, you can see here that the cost center manager did the approval. So that was that approval that I just did through PTGo. Now, because the controller's within the Sage desktop, they're already within Sage, so they can do their approval within here. It's basically exactly the same as through the web. You can just double click to open it up, or you can approve, click yes. Now, when I click post, you'll just see this little window popping up, and so that's where, because this is the final approval, Purchasing Workflow is now creating the purchase orders within Sage 300 automatically, and what it also can do is email those purchase orders back to the requisitioner. So the requisitioner gets an email with the PO or POs attached to it. They can then send that on to the vendor if that's required. All right, so that's just a quick look at putting a transaction through, and then the receiving. Actually, let's just touch on that. I haven't really got too much more time left, but the receiving is a pretty important part of the process. And there's one other thing I was wanting to show as well. So yeah, to do receiving, we now come into PO receipt. This will now show all of the purchase orders that are open, that are within cost centers that this user's got access to. So the people in Melbourne can't see the Sydney POs and vice versa, and they can't see the Brisbane POs, as they're all segregated. So here are our 3 POs that were created off our requisition for the airfares, the hotel and the taxis. Let's just do a quick receipt of the airfares. So we come in here, put in the date, and then we can do a receive all, or we can do a partial receipt, and we can attach supporting documents as well. So I'll receive all and then I'll click post. So this is now creating a receipt within the Sage PO module. All right, so that's an important part of the business process. The one other thing I was wanting to show is just funds availability inquiry. So this is where you can look up a cost center. And so what we're trying to do here is really just push this information, make it available to the people in the field so they don't have to keep asking finance for how they're going. So what this is now looking at the funds availability for the marketing cost center, and so they can see their GL codes. They've all got 500 there. That is what marketing is, and so you can see the budget, the actuals, the commitments, and the available. And so the idea is, people, the managers can just see, how they're tracking against budget, and this is all real time from Sage 300. All right, so that was the last part that I was just wanting to show you within the software. So now if we just come back to our PowerPoint, and we've covered quite a lot of this already, so we won't go over that too much more. So in terms of just touching on some of our other modules, I think I've already covered quite a bit of this as well. We've covered all of these modules already. We've got a module for stock taking. We've also got the audit logger module, which is another very important control solution. And then key communications, this is getting more and more sort of interest, as this is where emailing documents like invoices and statements out of Sage 300, and keeping a log of what's been sent out as well. And this also, key communications, that does the e-invoicing, the sending of e-invoices. Actually, I should just touch on that quickly as well. So, because Australia and New Zealand, but Australia is sort of leading the way on e-invoicing really. So within our solutions, within Payables Workflow, we can receive e-invoices that come into an organisation. And with key communications, we just released that in December for the sending of e-invoices out of Sage 300. So if you're wanting to send e-invoices rather than PDFs, then that is something that you can do with our key communications module.